In the fall of 2016, Jason Hardy and I were contacted by the Jack Daniels Distillery about surveying a cave on their property, Motlow Cave. We, of course, jumped on the wonderful opportunity and enlisted a few of our good friends to help us out. Included were Ben Miller, his wife Katie, Brian Ham, Nicole Miller, Haley Steinman, and Jason Lavender. During September of 2016, we surveyed the cave in 2 trips and made a third to document historical signatures with Marion O. Smith and Joe Douglas. After we finished our survey, another fellow caver, who is also a Tennessee Squire, nominated both Jason and I to become Tennessee Squires for our work in surveying the cave. The Tennessee Squire Association is a private membership by nomination only, and it was created more than 60 years ago to recognize loyal friends of Jack Daniels. So we were very honored to become Squires. Motlow Cave is located in the northeast corner of Lynchburg, Tennessee. It's on the east side of Stillhouse Hollow, 300 yards northeast of the famous Jack Daniels Cave. Motlow Cave is the most impressive and one of the most frequently visited Moore County caves. It is reputed to connect with the famous Jack Daniel Cave. However, after our 2016 survey, we noted that no physical connection could be made. However, it is likely that the water that flows through the passage near the entrance does end up in the famous Spring Cave. We also suspect that Motlow Cave is an old paleo trunk passage that was once connected to the Spring Cave but is now blocked by breakdown in what is called the New Discovery Room. You can see here on this map on the left side, that circle is the entrance to the Jack Daniels Cave, whereas the circle on the right is the entrance to Motlow Cave. It is just slightly uphill from the entrance to the famous cave. As noted by Tom Barr in his 1961 book, The Caves of Tennessee, the cave opening is a small hole on the hillside. Rodney Seiler, who worked at the distillery from 1977 to 1980 and was also a caver, asked if he could visit Motlow Cave when he found out they were going to put a new boiler room on top of the hill above the cave. At that time, the distillery was not even aware of Motlow Cave because at some point it had been sealed shut. After using Tom's book to locate the cave, Rodney, along with Milton Reese and Gore Irvin, explored Motlow Cave with the understanding from the distillery that they were to only explore passages where they could walk. A short time after Rodney's trip into Motlow Cave, the distillery did a few core samples on top of the hill and hit a void and broke into the big room in Motlow Cave. Here is an image from Tom Barr's book, The Caves of Tennessee, that he did of Motlow Cave. This is the map that he and B.H. Denton produced in 1954. You can see the entrance is very small. You can also see what is notable in the passageway here. It is 6 feet tall. I will point this out in a later photo when I show you some modifications that was done to the cave when it was commercialized. Another thing worth noting is at the top of the image, you see it is a 25-foot pit. Well, when we completed our survey in 2016, there was no longer a 25-foot pit in the room of this cave. Here are some images that were provided by Rodney Seiler from when he and Milton and Gore entered the cave on March 11, 1978. He wrote on the back of the picture, "Writing placed on a rock in the back room of Motlow Cave, March 11, 1978, during a venture by Milton Reese, Gore Irvin, and Rodney Seiler. The cave is soon to be covered to keep out surface water. The oldest date recorded on the wall was 1829 in the extreme right passage of the back room. There is no readily accessible means of connection between Motlow and Jack Daniel Cave." A few years later, in 1982, the Brown-Froman Corporation decided to renovate and commercialize Motlow Cave. They did some significant renovations to the cave, which included enlarging the entrance to 28 feet wide and 25 feet tall. They spent $97,000 in doing these renovations. They installed new Western red cedar doors. They hired Roy Davis, who was very well known for his work at Cumberland Caverns and a few other commercial caves, to do the lighting and to install a waterfall in the ceiling where they had previously broke into the big room. They also did some major renovations to the floor of the cave, including grading, bringing in gravel, installing stairs, and also burying that pit system that was in the big room. While they also did remap the cave at that time, another section was discovered, and they named it the New Discovery. They operated this commercial cave for around 20 years before they finally closed it again. Here is an image of a sign that you once would have seen on the grounds at the distillery in Lynchburg. If you wanted to visit Motlow Cave, you would just go see the ladies at the Lynchburg soda fountain for a ticket. Here is an image of the cave entrance from 2012. The distillery did not use the cave for quite some time, so it became quite overgrown at the entrance. You can see in this image, however, the original handmade Western cedar doors that were made by Larry Shockley from Belvidere, Tennessee. Each door weighed a whopping 400 pounds. Larry also used a lock on the doors, which was noted to be over 100 years old. Here is a more recent image where it shows how the distillery is now taking care of the entrance to the cave and the cave itself. They did clean up all of the debris around it. They've replaced the doors. You can actually see in this photo in the top left where they did install some new stairs. I'll show you an image here shortly inside of the cave of a new stair rail that they also put in. And then you can also see this old hardware that is on the doors as well. And again, here's some more images showing the hardware from the original door. They reused it on these new doors. And it is quite intricate and pretty cool, the locking mechanism on the inside of the door, as you can see on the right side of the screen. And then here is an image from the inside looking out. You can see that they also built another nice new set of stairs going down into the entrance of the cave with a new handrail there as well. Now, if you remember Tom Barr's map from earlier, where I was showing you on his map, it showed the ceiling height was 6 feet tall. Well, this is that passage. It now ranges anywhere from 9 to 15 feet tall. Something else that kind of gives it away is if you look at the floor of this cave, it's very flat. And there's also gravel. So those are indications and signs that when the cave was renovated in the 80s, they used heavy equipment to come in and level that out. And they probably did this just to make it more safer for their tourists, so there were no boulders or breakdown pieces of rock in the floor for tourists to trip over. It just probably made it a little bit easier on liability for them. Now here is another example on the left side showing you the very flat floor with the gravel. Another great example showing how they more than likely used a bobcat or some type of heavy equipment in here to clear out that passageway. If you look on the right side of the screen, there are a lot of historical signatures on the ceiling here, and that's another indication that they did modify the floor of this cave because there's no way anybody could reach that point in the ceiling with the way it is now. So again, the ceiling used to be about 6 foot high. So the average person would have been able to raise their hand and touch that ceiling, which is how they wrote their signatures on the ceiling in this passage. So here is something else very interesting in the cave are these saltpeter markings. There's this evidence that they appear to be, however, there is no found written documentation to ever support this. Now, another theory is that the distillery did this in the 80s to show how caves were used for saltpeter mining. Now, if you also remember, according to Tom Barr, his original description, it was a small hole. So that's also a good indication that this was probably definitely not used for saltpeter, but they did in the 80s put this in as a feature to educate the public on how caves were used for saltpeter in this area. So the cave consists of three large rooms. You have the entrance room, which is 30 feet in diameter and 30 feet high. And then you also have the big room, which is 75 feet by 40 feet by 40 feet high. Those two rooms are connected by a 300-foot long passage called the Central Tunnel. Then you also have what is called the New Discovery Room, which was discovered during the 1982 renovations of the cave. We'll get more into that here in a moment. So in this photo, what you're seeing is the main attraction of this commercial cave, also known as a show cave. They have some formations here in the middle of the big room where the waterfall would come in from above. So a lot of this calcite that you see here, and I'll show you some more detailed photos in a moment, were created from the man-made waterfall that was installed in the ceiling of this cave. Here is another image of the same area, just a different angle, where you can see those formations where the waterfall would come down. They also rocked in some lights. So you can see those lights here, how they rocked them in. And what they probably didn't anticipate is by them creating that waterfall, all of the calcite that it deposited, it made basically like rimstone dams on these little barriers that they built to protect these lights. Here is another image in the big room showing one of the large breakdown piles. The cave extends for just a little bit further up at the top of that breakdown pile, but not much. And here is showing what is up at the top of that breakdown. There are some formations up there. And then here is the second map of Motlow Cave. It is suspected that this one was created by Harry White when he mapped the famous Jack Daniels Cave. There's no name on this map, so again, that is just an assumption. This map was made during the Brown-Froman renovations in 1982, and if you notice here, they did still have the 62-foot pit system there on the right side of the screen on this map. But when we mapped this cave in 2016, that pit system was gone, completely buried over. So at some point, they made a decision to do that, and it was more than likely, again, for safety reasons for the tourists that would be going through this show cave. Now you can also see up on the top left where they added in the new discovery area that they discovered when they were surveying this cave. And I'll get into that a little bit more when I show our survey and what we did, and I'll show some images and even a video of going through that passage it takes to get to that new discovery. So in comparison to the 1982 map, here is the map that Jason Hardy created during our survey of the cave in 2016. So again, the Brown-Froman Corporation operated the cave as a commercial cave or a show cave for approximately 20 years before they closed it. And back in 2016, they had reached out to us to remap the cave, and the reason they told us they wanted it remapped was for the purpose of reopening it as part of VIP tours with the distillery. So we did come in and we did resurvey the cave. The total length of the cave is 1,672.7 feet long, and it's 97.7 feet deep. During our survey, we had 4 sketchers, which included Jason Hardy, Haley Steinman, Ben Miller, and Brian Ham. Now, one thing I did fail to mention already is when they called us in to do this survey of this cave and we agreed to do it, there was no money that exchanged hands. We survey caves as a passion, as a hobby. It's not a profession. And unfortunately, you just don't really get paid to do that around here. Now, we have been paid to survey caves in the past for the Appalachian Power Company, but that was a totally different situation. So as part of surveying this cave, we had only asked for them to do one thing in return, and that was to let us have a Tennessee Cave Survey meeting at the distillery and allow Tennessee Cave Survey members to visit this cave during that meeting. They very willfully accepted that and let us have that meeting, which was a really fun event. But also what they did when we started surveying this cave is because we weren't getting paid for it, they still treated us like employees, even though we were essentially volunteers. They put us through their safety training and gave us badges. It was a really, really cool experience to do this with the distillery. So the first day that we went in and started our survey, we had two teams of people. Team one was Jason Hardy, myself, and Haley Steinman. Team two was Ben Miller, his wife Katie, Brian Ham, and Jason Lavender. So each team had two sketchers. So while one was sketching the plan view, the other could do the profile, and then one or the other could also do some cross sections as well. It just sped things up on the teams to have two sketchers. And we didn't want to take a whole lot of time surveying this cave. We had planned to do it in 2 to 3 trips, which we did accomplish. Here are some sketches from the survey. So cartographers, this is what they actually do in the cave. We take the measurements. At this time, we were using a disto for distance, but we were still using a tandem compass and clinometer for our compass and inclination readings. So here are the sketches that they take from that data that's provided in the cave, and then they draw that on these sketches, and then they convert that to a digital drawing into the map. So I'll show you what that looks like next. So here we have an image showing that entrance in a digital form on the map. So they take the sketches, it then gets imported into the computer, and then it's drawn in the computer digitally. And then here is an image showing the final map of the big room. You can see there in the center where the main feature of this show cave was, where the formations were. And again, you can notice that there is no 62-foot pit system on our map. We looked very hard for that. We looked in that little side passage that kind of fingers off there, and it's completely gone. Now, off to the main entrance, when you come down into the cave to the right, there is another passage that extends into an area called the signature room. It is here that there are a lot of historical signatures in the cave, and this is why we called in the historians Marion O. Smith and Joe Douglas. Marion, we were very close to Marion, who passed recently. In any project cave that we had, we always used Marion as a resource, especially for the historical side of it. If we ever found signatures, if we found Virgin Cave, he was always there with us. So we deeply regret losing him recently. He was such a valuable resource to the cave-in community. He is going to be sorely missed. But I'll show you some pictures of those historical signatures that we brought him and Joe in to take a look at. There are some Civil War soldier signatures in here, so we'll show those as well. A lot of Civil War soldiers used caves in this region during that time frame and left their signatures in a lot of caves around here. So right off of the main room there at the entrance, you come down into this side passage, and at some point they had built this wall here. I do not know for certain if this happened during the 1982 renovations. It certainly possibly could have. We also found evidence of the Tennessee cave salamander in this cave. It was in that pool just right below that flowstone formation. So here is the very impressive historical signature room. This is located in a side passage that comes off of the main entrance and runs southeast for 150 feet. In this room, there are hundreds of signatures. However, the most notable are 3 sets of initials dated January 16, 1863, along with 51st ALA. It is believed that these signatures are from Civil War soldiers with the 51st Regiment of Alabama. Also in the signature room is the signature of Tom Motlow, who was the younger brother of Lemuel Motlow. The Motlows and the Daniels go way back because Jack Daniels' sister, she married a Motlow. So the oldest known signature in this area that we were able to find was dated 1834. This is also why we brought in the historians such as Marion O. Smith and Joe Douglas. We always included Marion in on our project caves, especially if we found historical signatures or there was virgin cave to be found. So back to our survey. On day 2 of our survey, it was Jason, myself, Haley Steinman, and Nicole Miller. And on this day, we decided to go beyond the squeeze just past the historical signature room to finish the survey into the new discovery. So this squeeze is very tight. It's only about 1.5 feet high and 9 to 12 inches wide. It goes for about 20 feet. So you're in this cramped up passage trying to squeeze and poke and pull your way through for about 20 feet. And then once you get on the other side of that passage, you come to a 20-foot pit. So we actually had to use a 150-foot rope and rig 90 feet back for this 14-foot pit because there was no natural rigging at the lip of the pit, and we did not want to set any bolts inside of this show cave. So it was quite interesting, the stretch in the rope for that flowstone, which I'll show you some images of that here in a moment. And then you can also see on this screen Jason's map of the new discovery room. So here you see some images of Jason going in and coming out of this tight squeeze. And then as soon as you come out the other side of the squeeze going into the new discovery, you are immediately at the lip of this 20-foot pit. So here is a short video, or actually it's a few minutes long, showing Jason coming through this squeeze
through
to the top of the 20-foot
tight
pit.
squeeze in the cave.
It looks like rough on the
Just pick a side.
It's a little gravity.
Oh, you filling it up, boy. So once again, this is what happens when the husband tries to follow the wife.
Yeah, right.
You ain't even to the tight spot yet.
Listen to that.
It's a demon! It's a demon coming through.
Oh yeah, they dug this. You can tell. Hey.
I'll get it from you.
This ain't shit. Ow.
Okay. Before you get any further, hold on, I want to show you something.
What?
Because you're going to have to stop right here. The survey station's right here.
Okay.
So,
Huh? I can't see anything because your light's in my eyes.
Okay, hold on.
Okay, I see the station.
Okay. That's the tightest spot. You're like, your butt's in that little tub thing.
Is it better to go high or low?
I just did it in the middle. So. That's the tight. Yeah, you could probably do it high. There you go. Get them hips through, boy.
There we go.
You might want to lower yourself because you're going to pass the station now.
Babe, I'm not measuring the station. Haley's skinny's gonna flip right through that shit.
Okay.
So you have wiggle room. Ugh. Damn.
You made it. It only took you 3 minutes.
Okay, move out.
So once you come through that crawlway, you are at the top of this pit, and then here is in 2 images showing what it looks like from the bottom looking back up to it. So you can see there is some flowstone there, and with our rigging so far back, it was quite the stretch. It made it quite interesting getting back up over this lip. From there, you then go down into this little area where it looks like all of the water drains in the cave. And then you climb up through this breakdown to enter into what is now known as the new discovery room. Here are some images from once you are inside of the new discovery room. We did find a little bat that had perished at some point, and his bones are there. This room measures approximately 240 feet by 100 feet wide and about 40 feet tall. There's one large haystack formation and several other smaller, nicer formations in this area as well. A few more of those nice formations. And then you can see Jason's sketches of this new discovery room. You can see there on the left side of his sketch how tight that little passage is that we have to go through to get to this area of the cave. And then the deepest point of the cave is at the bottom of a 25.7-foot pit, which is located in the new discovery room. There is a lot of breakdown in this area. If there ever was a connection to be made to the famous Jack Daniels Cave, it would have either be through the breakdown somewhere in this area that's yet to have been discovered, or in that 67-foot pit series that was in the main big room that was previously buried during the renovations. Here are some pictures of us after that day 2 of surveying. That's Jason and Haley there on the left, and then myself and Nicole on the right. We were quite muddy that day. So we'll talk a little bit more about the historical signatures because that is pretty significant in this cave. So again, we did bring in some historians, Marion O. Smith and Joe Douglas. We have known Marion for quite some time. It is quite unfortunate that he passed away recently because we relied on him a lot for a lot of our history. So much knowledge is now gone. Thankfully, he kept really good notes and journals of everything that he ever did. So hopefully at some point there will be a way to use his data for future research in caves and caving. So earlier I mentioned those signatures from the 51st Regiment. Here Marion is pointing those out. They were smoked into the wall. The initials were JMS and JNM. Marion later did some of his own research on these 2 men because that's what he did best, was history of Civil War signatures in caves. He wrote several books on the subject. So inscriptions from the men of the 51st Alabama Partisan Rangers is who they were. They were a cavalry regiment which served in the Army of Tennessee under Brigadier General Joseph Wheeler. And thank you, Marion, for researching and providing that information. So just to go into a little more detail on those initials, James M. Shields was a married South Carolina millwright living in Cherokee County, Alabama before the war. He enlisted in Company A, 51st Alabama on September 4, 1862, and was present through the end of 1863. John N. Morrison was a North Carolina-born carpenter in Calhoun County, Alabama before the war. He joined Company A, 51st Alabama on May 7, 1862. So at some point in time, these two fellows ended up together in Lynchburg, Tennessee, in Motlow Cave on that day in 1863, January, I believe that's 18th. Now, another very important signature in this room is that of Tom Motlow. He is the brother of Lemuel Motlow. He lived at the Mary Bobo boarding house from 1936 on. He was associated with the Farmers Bank of Lynchburg. He started as a cashier, and from April 1916 to his death in 1969, he was the president of such bank. His obituary claimed that he was considered an authority on money markets and the gold standard and had authored many articles on the subject. Now, again, the Motlows and the Daniels come into play because Jack Daniels' sister married a Motlow. So here is an image of the original Farmers Bank in Lynchburg, Tennessee. This photo was made around 1900. Frank Spoon Motlow is standing second to the left in the doorway. Spoon was the second president of the Farmers Bank, and standing next to him is Tom Motlow, who was the head cashier. And then next to Tom Motlow is Rufus Alonzo Parks, who was the vice president of the bank. The Farmers Bank that is on the square nowadays in Lynchburg was built by Lem Motlow in later years. Now, once again, the oldest signature that we were able to find in the cave was that from 1834. It was scratched in the right wall in the signature room, and Marion had found that, and there is a photo of him taking notes and pointing out those signatures in the cave. Another signature in the cave is that of James R. Reese. He lived from May 26, 1826 to July 27, 1906. He was a Moore County farmer and a native of Bedford County, Virginia. He served in Company A, 41st Tennessee Infantry, and was captured at Fort Donelson. He married Elizabeth W. Reese and had 6 children. Again, this is some more data that was provided from Marion O. Smith and his researching of Civil War signatures in caves. Here is another one that he researched, Willie Wagono, who was perhaps William H. Wagono, who lived from 1894 to 1931. And here are some more examples of actual notes from Marion. As you could see, he would go into the cave and he would take notes of all of these signatures. He would write down everything that was written, and then he would go home, and without a computer, he would research who these people were. He would go through the genealogy and find out who they were, where they were from, when they were born, when they died, all of that information. And again, he wrote several books on this as well. Here is another one that was pretty cool that we found in the cave. Now, this one was actually not smoked in. It was carved in to the mud, and it was that from Sergeant Marchatelli, and I'm probably totally bombing the pronunciation of that. He was from the 106th Infantry. There was no training camp for soldiers near Lynchburg until the state created one a mile from Tullahoma in 1926. It was named Camp Austin Pay. It was for use of the Tennessee National Guard. So in 1940, the U.S. War Department announced it was expanding this camp, and they renamed it Camp Forest. Army personnel began arriving in early 1941. It was an induction center for large numbers of drafters and was a large facility. And later in 1946, it was dismantled. So it is believed that is how Sergeant Marchatelli from Barnesboro, Pennsylvania, ended up here in Lynchburg, Tennessee, in Motlow Cave. And again, that's more data that's provided from Marion's research. After that day in the cave with Marion, Jason and I, since we are Tennessee Squires, we took Marion and Sharon down to the Motlow house, which is you can only get in if you're a Squire. They were providing some lunch that day, so it was actually a really cool and fun experience to get Marion and Sharon down in there, and then on the town of Lynchburg as well. Just to show a diagram, if you've ever been to Barbecue Hill at the Jack Daniels Distillery, the cave is located just below the large pavilion. They do special events there. The cave is closed to the public. It is only open during special events hosted by the Jack Daniels Distillery. So please don't show up at the distillery asking to go in Motlow Cave, as it is not open to the general public at this time. I always like to give a big thank you to the landowners who allow us to survey their caves. So thank you, Jack Daniels Distillery and the Brown-Froman Corporation, for allowing us that opportunity to survey Motlow Cave. Since the survey of the cave, Jason and I have built some relationships with several of the folks down at the distillery in the Motlow house who take care of the Squires. They've made several lodge skillets with the Squire logo on it, and I'm usually one of the first people they call to say, hey, we got a new one of your skillets. Do you want to come pick it up? If you ever get the opportunity to visit the Lynchburg area, the distillery is a wonderful place to visit. They have a wonderful, wonderful visitor center there. They have many different tours that they offer, and then they also have their bottle room where you can buy their spirits that they have on hand there too. So, and of course, I always want to thank the people who helped us on our survey. I always want to thank my husband, Jason Hardy, for all of his hard work, Ben Miller, his wife, Katie, Brian Ham, Haley Steinman, Jason Lavender, and Nicole Miller for helping us on this wonderful, exciting project. Thank you to Gregory Breck for nominating Jason and myself to become official Squires of the distillery. And of course, thank you again to Marion O. Smith and Joe Douglas for their expertise in historical signatures and helping to identify the numerous signatures that were inside of this cave. And then the last slide that I'm going to leave you with is the map of the famous Jack Daniels Cave. Now, everybody knows that, or has been told over the generations, that the cave water the water that comes out of the entrance of the cave is what they use to make their liquor, their whiskey, and that may have been true at one point. I don't think that it still is. I do know that they still use the water in their cooling process in some ways, so the water is still used. They do not allow visitation into the famous Jack Daniels Cave. Jason and I tried to get into the cave while we were surveying Motlow Cave for them, but unfortunately they never would allow us that access. We would, however, most certainly love to have the opportunity to remap that cave for them as well and give them a lot more detail on that map. We've also been told by some of the bat biologists in the area there's a large bat roost that lives inside of Jack Daniels Cave, so that's another reason why they don't allow visitors in there as well. So again, I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Please like and subscribe my channel here on YouTube if you like this type of content. Most of what we do here is caving. We are located in what's called the heart of t.a.g, which is short for Tennessee, Alabama, and Georgia. So come along with us on our many adventures, our survey projects, our working with landowners, our die trace projects, all of that fun stuff. Like and subscribe for more, and thank you for following my channel.